I'm going to assert that the science of where, maybe now wherever, has something to do with smart cities. Somehow it's a smart city to me is a natural connection to the science of where. It's kind of an application space. I won't revisit everything I talked about this morning, but I will touch on a few basic concepts. The first one is the definition of a modern GIS today. If I made this same slide 50 years ago, I would have had a database CAN in the center, and I would have had workflow connections updating it, transactions, and different kinds of views. The world has changed. A modern GIS has exactly the same definition, but has entirely different technology. It's a system for managing and applying geographic information. Today, it's not just workflow transactions that update the data, it's also real-time measurements that update what we work with, and it's also remote sensing in all of its different dimensions, including spacecraft and drones. The views to the modern GIS today are not only mapping, inquiry, science, but now online monitoring, as we just heard, a kind of dashboard view of what's going on for the manager, but also for citizen engagement. It's no longer just a city and a city GIS for a few. It's the information system made available for volunteerism or bring your own city, as we just heard. It's any kind of custom app. And in my view, this is going to evolve. We'll evolve from where we are today, desktops and servers and cloud, to this idea that there will be many servers and many services that the smart city of the future uses. Now this morning, and also in Rajesh's presentation, we saw glimpses of applications that already are current. But in the smart city application, things will become more real time. We will wire up virtually everything that moves and changes in the city, every temperature, where every single person is, where all vehicles are, what's going on with air pollution or noise pollution. The smart city will basically be sensing everything, including social media. And this will come in, be processed dynamically, and seen in situation awareness pictures like these two that I showed this morning. It'll also give us alerts, not only alerts for the mayor or the politician or the leader, but citizen alerts, so that if there's an emergency, some blow up occurs or a social conflict, everybody can be notified. So the city of the future is a city where everybody's connected and feeding off of this real-time data. Now, I put in a couple slides, these next slides, because they are views into the database of the future, actually, currently. Some views will be dashboards like these of performance measurement and transparency. For example, where is there need for bridges and where is the money going right now? Where is there need for police and where are we spending and putting the cops right now? This is very interesting dichotomy, because in a rational government, we want to put the resources where the need is. And in real-time GIS, these kinds of dashboards are going to become very relevant. Now, 7 years ago, I built the dashboard for the one in the center. This is called recovery.gov. This was for President Obama. He spent $870 billion stopping the decline of the economy in the United States. And he threw money everywhere onto thousands of projects, infrastructure projects, school projects, and so on. And he was afraid that spending all this money would introduce a level of corruption in our government. So he and Vice President Biden approached me and asked if we could build a dashboard for citizens, which would show where the money was going. So we made a map of thousands of dots, and every citizen in America could interact with the dot and find out what the project was and see if the project was funding the contractor who was the brother-in-law of the mayor and so on. And normally in America, we have something like 1% to 2% corruption. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true in government. Every democracy has this. But in this particular event, we expected 4 or 5% money that was badly spent. But it turned out by making all of this data transparent and involving every citizen, there was less than 1% corruption. It was amazing because all the eyes were on all the money being expended. So citizenship under President Obama became amazing in America. People were connected and they were involved. And there's some other examples: school performance in Abu Dhabi and education performance in Maryland. These are dashboards not for the mayor, but dashboards for the citizens so they can become, so that we move to another step of democracy. A smart city, ladies and gentlemen, is involving everybody. These are a couple of additional examples. They're demographics and comparative analysis, comparing multiple views. For example, on the right, 3 different cities and poverty patterns, so we can learn and understand best practices. The relationship between traffic and air pollution, identified with red dots. Or on the bottom, a project which we are still working on called the Urban Observatory, where several hundred cities around the world have made maps and shared them, all with the same legend, so we can compare one city against another with respect to traffic, air pollution, housing, healthcare facilities, etc. It's a kind of learning exercise. I'll come back to this in a minute. These are dashboards for citizens, not dashboards just for mayors, although mayors or politicians like them. Another thing that you mentioned, Director, that was enchanting to me was that smart cities need better planning. And by integrating data from many sources using web services, as we saw this morning, we can actually do urban design or regional design or planning in ways like we could never before. We can make alternative designs and quickly provide dashboards of the impact of those designs. This is called sometimes the geodesign process. So many users are doing great inventories. Some of you are doing great maps and visualization. Others are doing great models. But the next step in the evolution of GIS is geodesign. This is equipping those 3 elements in such a way for the planner to sketch, evaluate, and take action. These are just some simple examples. I showed many this morning, and Rajesh also showed others. The ability to do city sketching and quick evaluation. This is something that I want you to advocate as GIS professionals. Move beyond just making maps. Get engaged in the design and planning process. The other mention was open data and citizen engagement. These are just a handful of examples of portals which are providing information out to citizens so they become volunteers in making the city better, or better citizenship occurs through the language of maps. And this is just beginning. I'll finish on two other subjects. One of the big tragedies in local government, but also national government, is sectorialism. Urban bureaucrats work very hard on their sector. The planners work very hard in planning. The engineers work very hard in engineering. The police work very hard on policing. But very rarely do we have holistic collaboration across organizations. Data is collected at the operational level, fed up to planners in each division, and then given to management. And management is supposed to be able to do something with that data. This is not the way the world works, ladies and gentlemen. They make sort of gut, decisions, not in a holistic way. They just sort of react. And maps have certainly helped there. But the big transformation that's starting to occur with WebGIS is that different departmental systems are sharing their data so that the information can be dynamically integrated and overlaid. This is going to change cities and how they are organized and managed, because everyone inside the city will have access to all of the information. This is the big dream of the integrated urban information system. And for my entire life, I've never been able to get there because the database was too hard to assemble. Collaboration was too difficult to make happen. People did not collaborate. So I'm going to show you a city. This is the city of Minneapolis, very briefly, who presented at our users conference a couple years ago. They've been our user for 30 years, doing lots of good work in the departments. But, well, I'll let the young man tell the story here. Perhaps I will, or perhaps I won't.
Steve Misterek, who's been very kind enough to come from City of Minneapolis with his team here, show you what they're doing with this kind of model in the city, and it'll become much more real. Steve.
Thank you, Jack. Good morning. I'm Steve Misterek, GIS coordinator for the City of Minneapolis. I live in and work for this great city of lakes, full of lush parks and trees, first-class trail systems, and of course our vibrant neighborhoods in downtown. I started my career in Minneapolis IT as a GIS intern and worked into my current position. I love our work because our GIS team gets to play a role in so many interesting pieces of how we operate as a city. Minneapolis has been using GIS for decades. Desktop users maintain essential data sets across our city departments every day, like Jigliola Malka, who edits our water distribution data, and Garrett Bing, who mapped our bikeways. These are just two examples of desktop users that keep our data accurate and up to date. But a few years back, we were struggling a bit. We had great databases and tools and users, but we were having difficulties implementing our enterprise vision. At that time, we were too focused on centralization and standards, and to be enterprise meant everything needed to fit into our one box. As a result, many of our departments didn't see the value in participating, and they chose to continue working in silos. What we discovered was that our approach was just a little bit too restrictive, and sometimes it was out of focus with the core needs of our business units. We had built a really great enterprise GIS, but we had yet to fully realize our goals. And then, during the recession, we went from a team of 8 to a team of 3, leaving John Obermohr, Mark Benishek, and myself to run it all. So clearly, we needed a new approach. We decided to cast a wider net within the city, to broaden our group of capable users, to convince middle managers that GIS would improve their business, and to show our value to executive leadership. To do this, we decided to change our perspective on our roles as GIS professionals, to trust our users more, and to let go of some of the control that we had previously held. We now focus on 3 key missions: provide enabling infrastructure, share our education and our expertise, and promote our capabilities and our agility. Since we are the city of lakes, I want to use a fishing analogy to explain how we promote our capabilities to 3 groups of people: to innovators, traditionalists, and to leaders. For innovators, they already have an aptitude for technology and applying it to their jobs. So we just need to teach them to fish. We show them GIS tools that we provide, we support them, and then we just let them get on with their work. For traditionalists, we need to show them the value of our fish. These are people who have built their careers around existing business processes. We need to show them prototypes and tools that will help to improve their business processes. For leaders, we just need to feed them fish. We deliver valuable business solutions that meet their business requirements. In 2012, we launched Map It Minneapolis. This added the WebGIS pattern that Jack was talking about on top of our existing enterprise. It revolutionized our ability to implement our new approach. And since then, we have seen many of our users blossom and their numbers greatly increase.
I don't know why it stopped. Well,
Steve Misterik, who's been very kind enough to come from City of Minneapolis with his team.
And their numbers greatly increase.
I think that this video, which I did not test before showing you, unfortunately, stops right here. But let me tell you the rest of the story. Is they spent in Minneapolis millions of dollars consolidating all their data into one big data bank. That failed. Everybody got laid off. Alternatively, they set up services in each of the separate departments where the data was being maintained. They serverized it into that portal and then made the data available to everyone. The story is really interesting because they decided to go outside the box and sell this to the city manager and to the different politicians. They sold parking ticket applications. They sold tree downing in big wind applications. They sold education applications to the politicians whose constituencies were squeezing them for answers. And they got out of the traditional system of record keeping and went up a higher level. The kind of thing that mayors actually care about are policy maps or real-time situation awareness maps that really rang music to them. The result is all of a sudden the whole city changed. Like within 3 months, they were completely overwhelmed with requests for this web services application. Then they started to introduce how to fish. In other words, using web maps to do it yourself. Suddenly, it wasn't a few dozen GIS people in the city, it was the whole city using and accessing the spatial information. And the mayors were happy, the councilmatic people were happy. It's a good story, and I'm sorry I couldn't really share the entire thing. But it is kind of like changing from this centralist old approach to the idea of web services bringing everything together with a common picture. It really worked and changed the entire culture in the city of Minneapolis. The second thing I want to talk about, I introduced also this morning, is this concept of a hub. In Minneapolis, they organized all the data for internal use. All the key departments were turned into online information providers, and the city got healthier. In Los Angeles, the idea went further. What the mayor wanted is he wanted all of his citizens connected and using the same geographic information. what did you call it? BYO? I think bring your own, DIY, something like that. He had the right idea. You were able to articulate it better than he. But he wanted to be able to use the millions of dollars that they were spending internally in the city and turn it around and make it available to all the citizens in the city. So not only make the data available, but he said, I have some initiatives that I'd like to engage with the citizens. And here's what his initiatives were: water conservation, traffic congestion, parking. These were all the things that people were complaining about. So inside of his hub, he used web mapping to very quickly build applications that spoke to the actual citizens. He took all of his existing data and built the initiatives around his existing data to speak to community leaders and to citizen groups and to schools and to startups, recruiting startups to work on the problems that he was having, like graffiti or homeless. And they started collecting data in a GIS that was designed for the community. So how many users does Los Angeles have, ArcGIS users? If you add up all the different departments, it's about 400. 400 people that actually do analytics. But now, he's opened it up so there's 6 million users. And the core users, particularly in the mayor's office, are feeding the information out for the rest of the community using these concepts of initiatives, maps that speak about performance measurement, or housing for homeless, or economic development maps. So it isn't just putting GIS out there, it's led by people like you who are listening to the mayor and listening to the council people on real issues and turning it into a different kind of GIS, a community language. And this is working quite well. Technically, this is how it's done. Just like Minneapolis, they took all the different departments, had each department serve their data into a common portal. So as the updated data is done in each department, it's dynamically across the web fed into a common portal for use internally. Let's call that the internal hub. And then it's replicated every night out to an external web GIS. In this case, it's ArcGIS Online, where there's a series of apps that support startups, not only looking at open data, but looking at open maps and map services. And so it's startups are doing this, NGOs are getting involved, the kids in school, and there are thousands of kids in Los Angeles now that are starting to use maps and work on urban problems. They're learning at 15 years old, 16 years old, issues that they are interested in. What are kids at 15 or 16 interested in, or 14? They're interested in all the same issues we are, like we saw this morning with that young gentleman looking at pollution in India. The kids in Los Angeles are working on gangs. They're looking at violence in the city. They're looking at education scores. They're looking at the price of money that goes to every school in a disproportionate way. These kids are as smart as us. They're looking at PhD level research, but done at 15 years old and learning GIS at the same time. The power of getting data into the open community is not simply a few civic hackers that might be interested. It's a matter of mobilizing with your geographic information, everybody. I'm really excited about this, and I think it's just another step in the evolution of our field. When I started, this was 50 years ago, GIS and Michael Goodchild, the guy that you listened to this morning, we were both kids, and we thought this was kind of a fun science project. And then the emergence during the 80s and 90s with COTS tools meant that we could actually apply it. You could apply it. And then it started to become a higher level application use technology. the vision that I think we can take this to is with services and open systems and using our brains, move this up a notch so that everybody actually is enjoying the access to geographic language or the science of where and participating in the democracy of their country, of their city. So I think I sound like I'm preaching to the choir here. I think you guys understand it. But I think what we don't quite have together in India yet are examples where we push the envelope in this regard. So I was very happy to listen to the director this morning because I think the opportunity, and you see it through his funding and his nurturing, to be able to take cities that you guys are in and turn them into pilots, do footprints of making this happen. Technology, it's, as I showed this morning, as you saw, is actually there to be able to do it. It's now just up to your own creativity and initiatives to do it. Well, I think that concludes my talk, Rajesh. Are we going to have a little panel discussion or? Good, thank you.